Hello, I'm Robin Jackson, a Senior Director at Charter Communications. I started in the cable industry 20 years ago with Time Warner Cable and have worked closely with testing, automation, and test data support in the 13 years I was with Time Warner Cable and in the past 7 years with Charter Communications. 4 years ago, we started partnering with Parasoft to use their service virtualization tool to help us solve a performance testing issue we had. And since then, we've grown to using service virtualization with over 35 applications at Charter, which includes Spectrum Mobile, telemetry applications, Tech Mobile, provisioning and activation of services, and many more. In this session, for how Charter uses service virtualization to improve testing, I'm going to start with a brief overview of service virtualization and how we implement it. Then I will talk about why we decided to implement service virtualization in 3 specific applications. I will discuss what the application is, the testing or data issue we had, and how service virtualization helped us overcome that issue and the key benefits we've realized. So what is service virtualization and how can you leverage it? I know most of you understand what service virtualization is and why you may want to use it, but just in case we have a few new people to service virtualization, let me start by giving a brief overview. Service virtualization is a technique that enables testers and developers to simulate services, data, or specific components for testing by replacing existing systems with virtualized systems so that functional or performance testing can be done. Here are some use cases when service virtualization can be leveraged. When there's a lack of availability of internal environments, services, or even third-party systems. When services are cost-intensive to use for testing, maybe there's a cost per transaction. When the environment isn't scaled to support performance testing, or when the test data setup is very complex or unavailable. And lastly, maybe you're just trying to do early adoption of services that aren't deployed yet. Now let's discuss our process to implementing service virtualization. We receive an intake ticket and we set up a meeting to discuss the ask for virtualization. We review the test scenarios and get sampled requests and responses from the services the customer would like virtualized. My team will then build virtual assets, a data repository, and configure the proxies to virtualized endpoints. They deploy those assets locally first to unit test. After that passes, then they build the configuration. Then they deploy the virtual asset endpoints for the services into the application and perform more end-to-end integration tests before completing the ticket and letting the customer know they are ready to go. Now let's start to look at a few specific applications at Charter where we implemented service virtualization and why. Spectrum Mobile. So Charter launched Spectrum Mobile in June of 2018, where we're able to deliver data speeds that are on average more than 35% faster than the competition. That being said, what issues did we have when we wanted to performance test our mobile application? Our first issue is that Spectrum Mobile consumes many third-party web services, like Experian products, Fraud Check, and Credit Check. We also use ID Analytics, which provides services for credit risk, fraud detection, payment, and theft services. We also need to use complex and sensitive test data like Social Security number, credit card, name, phone, and email. Plus, we have many different data set combinations that need to be set up to test customers' risk approval scores and ratings. And we need to have the ability to turn off virtualization when we want to. So how did we solve for all these issues? We use Parasoft Virtualize for simulating the behavior of third-party services from Experian and ID Analytics, so we can focus the testing on our internally developed mobile components to see how they respond under load scenarios and if our transactions meet the SLAs. We built virtual services with hybrid response mode, which has combined the ability to get responses from virtual services as well as real services based on matching conditions. This enables us to test some complex and sensitive scenarios, like when you need to test a customer that has a certain credit score, or when you need a customer that has a past debt they owe. We also worked with our development teams so that virtualization can easily be turned on or off, depending on the type of testing they want to perform. The next application we have been very successful in using virtualization for is with Spectrum Proactive Service Alerts. This enterprise application proactively sends communication alerts regarding any node level or hub level outages for our customers. These communications will provide customers with initial, updated, and final detailed information related to their outage. What issues did we have when we wanted to performance test for proactive service alerts? We consume internal web services from Scope for polling customer premise equipment for checking device status, whether it's online, offline, or disconnected. This is a third-party application which is not scaled to support load testing. This application also uses a test lab environment, which is not available all the time. And lastly, the test data setup is an issue to trigger node or hub level outages with the required combination of data. So our solution was to virtualize the third-party system Scope, since it's not sized appropriately, and by using virtualization, that allows us to test even when the lab environment isn't available. Then we were able to virtualize the complex data scenarios to mimic real-time outages. We run about 180 different test scenarios specific to account, line of business, equipment status, etc. on a monthly basis. We are even able to simulate natural disaster scenarios by using virtualization. The last program I want to discuss is Spectrum Tech Mobile. This is a mobile work order application that empowers field service technicians to complete their jobs and activate customer services as quickly as possible. What were our issues to be able to performance test Tech Mobile? Again, this application consumes third-party web services, and it's integrated to systems that are not scaled to capacity or have a cost to use them. Those systems are WFX and Scope. We also have an internal application, our provisioning InstaStack, which has complex data dependencies, including the need to access real devices for activation and the need to set up real tech IDs and logins. So how did we overcome these issues? We replaced the third-party and internal systems like WFX, Scope, and InstaStack services with virtualization so that we can directly load test Tech Mobile to ensure it will meet the SLAs. And by using the Parasoft virtualized performance profiling feature, all the third-party external services are virtualized with actual production latency to match real-time behavior. We were also able to generate complex data and remove the dependency on real devices and real technician IDs by using the data repository and data generator functionality. Here are some of the benefits we have seen from using service virtualization with the programs I just discussed. For test data, we save about $20,000 a year in regards to not testing directly against the WFX third-party applications for Tech Mobile alone. We also save about $7,600 a year by doing test data setup on virtual devices instead of real devices, not to mention the lab space and cost to buy and maintain the additional real devices we would have. We've also been able to increase our test coverage by more than 20% in mobile with the type of scenarios we can create with virtualization instead of getting real Social Security numbers and setting up accounts with credit scores. We've also been able to replicate over 40 services by setting up virtualized versions instead of hitting the real service, which gives us the ability to continue testing even when that service is not available. I hope you have enjoyed this session about service virtualization and how it has helped us address many different testing challenges. In closing, here are the 3 takeaways I will leave you with for areas where maybe service virtualization can also help you as well. How to simulate test data in environments to enable continuous testing. How to save money by testing against virtual versions of third-party or internal solutions. And how to increase your test coverage by virtualizing complex and sensitive test data sets or by virtualizing real devices. Thank you.